Transylvania, a land of dark forests and old castles. This is the land of Dracula, a creature of the night, a vampire. Dracula is a legend known all over the world. His story has been told again and again in books and films. But Dracula isn't just a made-up character, he's based on a real man, Vlad III, also known as Vlad Dracula or Vlad the Impaler. He was a prince of Wallachia, which is now part of Romania. Vlad lived in the 1400s and was known for his cruelty. This is the story of Vlad the Impaler, a story of war, bloodshed, betrayal, and secrets. Vlad's childhood was full of trouble. His father, the ruler of Wallachia, was removed from power and killed. Vlad and his brother were taken hostage by the Ottoman Empire. Vlad's time there made him hate the Ottomans. After years as a prisoner, Vlad escaped and went back to Wallachia. He wanted his father's throne back, and he became one of the most feared rulers in Europe. He would be known as Vlad the Impaler. Vlad III was born in 1431 in Sighisoara, Transylvania. Transylvania was an important area between the Kingdom of Hungary and the Ottoman Empire. Vlad's father, Vlad II, also known as Vlad Dracula, was the ruler of Wallachia. Wallachia was controlled by Hungary. Vlad Dracula was a member of the Order of the Dragon, a group that protected Christianity from the Ottomans. Vlad's childhood was full of trouble, with Wallachia always being threatened by its neighbors. Even with all the trouble, Vlad received a good education and learned how to fight. He was a smart student but had a dark side, known for getting angry quickly and being ruthless. In 1442, Vlad's father had a tough choice to make. The Ottoman Sultan wanted his sons as hostages to make sure Vlad II stayed loyal. Vlad and his younger brother Radu were taken to the Ottoman capital, Adrianople. They received a good education and military training, but they were still prisoners. Vlad's time as a hostage changed him. He saw the power and cruelty of the Ottomans and started to hate them deeply. Vlad's brother Radu adjusted well, becoming a Muslim and fighting for the Ottomans. But Vlad never forgot his home and family. In 1447, Vlad's father and older brother were murdered by their own people. The Ottomans helped someone else take the Wallachian throne. Vlad was heartbroken and wanted revenge. Even though he was a captive, Vlad never gave up hope of going back to Wallachia. He knew he had supporters there and waited for the right time. Wallachian politics were always changing, with alliances being made and broken. Vlad was just a piece in a bigger game, but he had his own plans. In 1448, Vlad saw his chance. The ruler of Wallachia was killed in battle. With help from the Ottomans, he tried to take the throne. Vlad's campaign was fast and brutal. He quickly took control of Wallachia. He became Vlad III, voivoda of Wallachia. Vlad defied the Ottomans and refused to be controlled by them. He showed his power and refused to pay the Sultan. Vlad even attacked Ottoman territory, which was very risky. Vlad was stuck between the Ottoman Empire to the south and the Kingdom of Hungary to the north. He used these two powers against each other, making and breaking alliances. Vlad built up his army, made his castle stronger, and prepared for war. Life in Wallachia under Vlad was hard, with strict laws and harsh punishments. Vlad wanted to create order in a chaotic world and wasn't afraid to use violence. In 1456, Sultan Mehmed II demanded payment from Vlad. Vlad's response was brutal. He had the Ottoman messengers impaled. This started a war between Wallachia and the Ottoman Empire. Sultan Mehmed marched on Wallachia, but Vlad used hit-and-run tactics to bother the Ottoman army. Vlad's tactics slowed them down and made them lose hope. As the Ottoman army moved into Wallachia, they entered a thick forest. Vlad had turned the forest into a deadly maze with traps and obstacles. The Ottomans moved carefully, knowing Vlad's men were hiding. Vlad's men, experts at blending in, attacked the Ottomans, who never knew when or where they would strike. The forest itself had become the Impaler's weapon. When it got dark, the Ottoman army set up camp in a clearing. Vlad had been watching them and picked the right time to attack. His men were placed around the clearing, ready to strike. Vlad's attack was fast and brutal, completely surprising the Ottomans. The clearing was lit up by burning tents, and the air was filled with the smell of blood and smoke. Vlad fought like a madman, showing no mercy. After the night attack, it was a scene of total destruction. The clearing was covered with Ottoman bodies, many impaled. Vlad's use of impalement was both a way to fight and scare his enemies. News of Vlad's brutality spread, even reaching the Sultan. Mehmed II told his army to leave Wallachia. It was a humiliating defeat. Vlad's victory over the Ottomans made him known as a fearless warrior and gave him the name Vlad the Impaler. Vlad's victory came at a high cost. Wallachia was ruined by the war. Towns and villages were destroyed and people were starving. Vlad had the difficult job of rebuilding his land and protecting its borders. He made people pay high taxes and punished anyone who disagreed with him. He ruled with an iron fist. Even with the hardships, Vlad's victory was important for Wallachia. It kept Wallachia independent for another generation. Vlad the Impaler's reign was a time of great turmoil and bloodshed, but it was also a time of great change. Vlad was a complicated man. He was a ruthless tyrant who killed thousands of people, but he was also a national hero who fought hard to defend his country from invaders. Over the centuries, people have seen Vlad as both a hero and a villain. He's been the subject of countless books, films, and artwork. His name is now associated with cruelty and barbarity, but people also remember his courage, determination, and loyalty to his people. In Romania, Vlad the Impaler is still a controversial figure. Some see him as a national hero who fought to protect his country from the Ottoman Turks. Others see him as a brutal tyrant who killed thousands of innocent people. Vlad was a complicated person, and people still debate his legacy today. Vlad's image has changed over time. In the 1400s, he was seen as a ruthless but effective ruler who wasn't afraid to use violence. But later, his enemies made him seem even worse. He was portrayed as a bloodthirsty monster who enjoyed making people suffer. This image of Vlad became popular in Western Europe, where he became a symbol of the East's savagery. Vlad the Impaler's name is closely tied to the legend of the vampire. This connection started in the 1800s when Bram Stoker wrote his famous novel Dracula. Stoker used different sources when creating his vampire count, including the historical figure of Vlad the Impaler. Stoker used Vlad's name and some parts of his history, but the fictional Dracula isn't much like the real Wallachian prince. The vampire Dracula is a supernatural creature of the night, while Vlad the Impaler was a human being, although a cruel one. Even though the fictional and historical figures are different, being associated with Dracula has affected how people see Vlad the Impaler. The vampire myth has made it hard to separate fact from fiction about Vlad's reign. The Dracula story is still popular today in many different forms, and this has kept Vlad the Impaler's name well known. The vampire legend might have changed his image, but it has also kept his memory alive for centuries. Vlad the Impaler might be gone, but thanks to Dracula, his story lives on. The connection between Vlad the Impaler and vampires is very weak. There's no historical proof that Vlad drank blood or did anything else vampiric. The association probably came from Vlad's reputation for cruelty and his habit of impaling his enemies. In Eastern European folklore, impalement was sometimes linked to vampires. People believed that vampires couldn't decompose normally and would keep bleeding even after death, so people who were impaled were sometimes thought to be vampires. It's important to remember that the vampire myth is much older than Vlad the Impaler. Belief in vampires and other supernatural creatures has existed in many cultures for a long time. Vlad's association with vampires is mostly because of 1800s literature and isn't based on historical fact. Even though there's no historical evidence, the connection between Vlad the Impaler and vampires is still very strong. The image of Vlad as a bloodthirsty tyrant who impaled his enemies has become mixed up with the image of the vampire, creating a powerful and lasting myth. In the 1900s and 2000s, historians have started to look at Vlad the Impaler's place in history differently. They've started to look past the exaggerated stories of his cruelty and examine his reign more carefully. Vlad was definitely brutal, but it's important to remember that he lived in a very violent time. The 1400s was a time of constant war in Eastern Europe. The Ottoman Empire was growing quickly, and the kingdoms and principalities in the area were fighting to survive. Vlad's cruelty can be seen as a result of the time he lived in. He was a warrior king who was fighting to protect his people. Modern historians have also pointed out Vlad's achievements as a ruler. He was a good administrator who made the central government stronger and changed the legal system. He encouraged trade, and Wallachia became wealthier during his reign. Vlad also strongly defended his country against invaders, both Ottoman and Hungarian. Vlad the Impaler may always be associated with cruelty and barbarity, but modern historians have done a good job of showing a more balanced view of his reign. He was a complicated person who was both a product of his time and someone who left a lasting impact on history. Vlad the Impaler is still popular in books, films, TV shows, and video games. His image continues to fascinate and horrify people all over the world. But how do people see Vlad today? Is he a hero or a villain? The answer is complicated. People still debate Vlad's legacy today. In Romania, some people still see him as a national hero, while others see him as a cruel tyrant. His image is complex, showing both his brutality and his role in protecting Wallachia from the Ottomans. Internationally, Vlad the Impaler is mostly known for his connection to vampires, thanks to Bram Stoker's novel Dracula. This connection is weak, but it has made Vlad a famous horror figure. The vampire myth has overshadowed the real history of Vlad's reign, making it hard to separate fact from fiction. Even though people are still fascinated by his cruelty and his connection to vampires, more people are starting to appreciate the historical Vlad the Impaler. People are starting to see that he was more than just a bloodthirsty tyrant. He was a skilled ruler, a clever strategist, and a strong defender of his people. Vlad the Impaler's story reminds us that history is rarely simple. It's a mix of good and bad. Vlad the Impaler, a name that makes people afraid and amazed, a name that makes people think of dark forests, big castles, and fields of impaled bodies. His story, a mix of history and legend, continues to fascinate and horrify us centuries after his death. Vlad's reign, although short, left a lasting impact on Wallachia and beyond, shaping how people see the man and the myths surrounding him. Vlad lived in a brutal time when violence was common and rulers were harsh. His methods were extreme even for his time, but he was also a smart politician, a skilled military leader, and a fierce defender of his people. He fought hard to keep Wallachia independent from the Ottoman Empire, showing his dedication to his homeland. History remembers Vlad the Impaler for his cruelty, but it's important to remember the complexities of his character and the time he lived in. He was both a tyrant and a liberator, capable of great brutality and great courage. His story reminds us that the past is rarely simple, and even the most hated figures can have surprising depths. The legend of Vlad the Impaler will continue to fascinate and be debated for generations to come. He will be remembered as a monster, a hero, and everything in between. One thing is for sure, Vlad the Impaler will always be remembered in history, showing the lasting power of myth and how complicated humans can be.